Few names in modern history evoke as much admiration and as much debate as David Ben-Gurion. Revered as the founding father of Israel, he led the nation through its birth in turbulent early years. But behind the image of a nation builder lies a man of tough choices, relentless ideology, and controversial decisions. This is the Legacy Report, and today, we uncover the legacy and controversy of David Ben-Gurion. Born in 1886 in Plonsk, Poland, then under the Russian Empire, David Ben-Gurion, later known as Ben-Gurion, was inspired by Zionist ideals from a young age. By 1906, he had immigrated to Ottoman Palestine, determined to build a homeland for the Jewish people. He became a leader of the Jewish labor movement and helped found the Histadrut, a powerful labor federation that would shape early Israeli politics and society. In time, he became head of the Jewish Agency, effectively the government-in-waiting of the Jewish people in Palestine. His rise wasn't just political, it was personal. Ben-Gurion believed in the rebirth of the Jewish identity, strong, rooted, and sovereign. He promoted Hebrew as the national language, agriculture as a spiritual calling, and the desert as the land of future hope. On May 14, 1948, as the British mandate over Palestine ended, Ben-Gurion stood in Tel Aviv's Independence Hall and declared, "We hereby proclaim the establishment of the Jewish state in Eretz Israel, to be known as the State of Israel." Within hours, 5 Arab nations invaded. Ben-Gurion, now Prime Minister and Defense Minister, had no choice but to lead the newborn state into war. Ben-Gurion swiftly organized the scattered Jewish militias into the Israel Defense Forces. He demanded one national army, refusing to allow factions like the Irgun or Lahi to operate independently. This decision sparked the infamous Altalena affair, a confrontation between the IDF and the Irgun. Ben-Gurion ordered the shelling of the Altalena, a ship carrying arms. To him, national unity was worth the cost. To others, it was fratricide. Israel won the 1948 war, but at a cost. Over 700,000 Palestinians became refugees. Entire villages were emptied or destroyed, some in battle, others under expulsion orders. Ben-Gurion insisted these were necessary acts of defense. Critics argue they were part of a systematic plan to displace. With the war over, Ben-Gurion turned to construction. He oversaw mass immigration, Holocaust survivors from Europe, and Jews fleeing persecution in Arab lands. Tent cities grew into towns. He built schools, hospitals, roads, and kibbutzim. He helped create the Mossad, modernized the IDF, and fostered Israel's first diplomatic ties. But not everyone shared equally in this new state. Ben-Gurion's melting pot vision sought to mold all Jews into a single Israeli identity. Mizrahi and Sephardic Jews felt pushed aside. Their languages, traditions, and voices were often left out of the national story. He also maintained military rule over Arab citizens of Israel until 1966. They could vote, but lived under restrictions. This dual reality, democracy for some, surveillance for others, casts a long shadow on his legacy. Ben-Gurion believed security came first. He authorized covert operations, including sabotage missions abroad. One such mission, the Lavon Affair, involved planting bombs in Egyptian targets to sour Egypt's ties with the West. It failed. Agents were caught. Israel's reputation was tarnished. Though not directly involved, Ben-Gurion defended the accused, sparking political scandals that would divide the government for years. More secretly, he initiated Israel's nuclear program. With help from France, Israel built a reactor in Dimona. Officially, the program didn't exist. Unofficially, it gave Israel regional deterrence. This unspoken nuclear legacy continues to define Israeli defense policy today. Ben-Gurion made peace with the ultra-Orthodox. For political survival, he granted exemptions from military service, control over marriage laws, and funding for religious schools. Critics say this deal seeded decades of inequality and division. He also refused to write a formal constitution, fearing it would divide rather than unify. Instead, Israel functioned on basic laws, a patchwork system that still shapes debate over democracy and judicial power today. His decision to accept reparations from West Germany in 1952 was perhaps his most unpopular move. Survivors took to the streets in protest, but Ben-Gurion saw it as essential for economic survival. To him, pragmatism always trumped sentiment. In 1963, Ben-Gurion retired and moved to Sde, a tiny desert kibbutz. But he continued writing, warning of social divisions and urging development of the Negev desert. He briefly returned to politics but eventually withdrew, watching from afar as new leaders reshaped the nation he built. Ben-Gurion passed away in 1973, weeks after the traumatic Yom Kippur War. He was buried simply, overlooking the desert he loved. Even in death, he remained larger than life. David Ben-Gurion was a builder, a fighter, a dreamer, and a divider. He turned Zionist aspiration into a living state, but he did so through power, control, and uncompromising vision. He once said, "In Israel, in order to be a realist, you must believe in miracles." And perhaps his greatest miracle was making the improbable nation of Israel a geopolitical reality. Yet his legacy still stirs fierce debate. Was he a hero of survival or an architect of exclusion? A nation's founder or its flawed prophet? That is the complexity of leadership and the essence of the Legacy Report. If this deep dive made you think, like, share, and subscribe, comment below, who should we cover next? Until next time, keep questioning and keep learning.